Huzzah. I'm going to give an intro.
Okay.
GM, everyone. I am so excited for this call in particular. We have quite a lineup. If anybody had missed the news of the past week on OpenSea, seeing the number one by Ledger in the marketplace, we are joined today by Ariel Wengroff. So this is Genius Call number 7, not your keys, not your coin, keeping your Web3 and crypto secure with Ledger. A little preamble here. With billions in assets scammed and hacked in 2021, we want to make sure the CPG pop community stays secure and understands how to navigate Web3 in an easy and fun way. This session is going to cover using hardware wallets on a daily basis, especially when chasing mints, and why having a hardware wallet matters. Also going to cover the future of wallets, self-sovereignty. I don't want to spoil it all. Let me get to why Ariel is amazing. Ariel runs, and I hope I'm saying this correct, I'm pretty sure I am. Ariel runs global marketing and communications for Ledger, which is the world's leading platform for securing your critical digital assets in Web3. She is also an active member of the athletics community and is super generous and has hooked up CBG Pop with so much stuff. Ariel, thank you so much for being here this evening, and the floor is yours. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I mean, honestly, I'm very happy to be speaking with everyone today. I think if you don't know kind of the origin, and also I'll say I'm calling in today from Vermont, actually, where I went to school. So I'm at a friend's house, which is really nice to kind of be here from there. But if you hear any dog noises, it's just a dog chiming in on the future of NFTs. But I think it's incredibly important because I actually got so much of my education when I first joined Ledger, which, if you don't know, is actually kind of the world's most secure way to access and protect your digital life right now through crypto and emerging with blockchain. But with the way that that's evolving, which we'll get into, it'll continue to be more and more important. And I really learned so much through Chris and through Jamie and the whole group in CPG Genesis. And so it's really just always my pleasure and kind of first priority to be able to give back to the pop and CPG communities. So if you have questions, as it was mentioned, save them for later on. And if there's an answer that I can't get to you today, I will absolutely make sure to get it to you as soon as possible. So what's really nice about this conversation is there's no way that you could be in pop without actually having some form of a wallet. So we will start by going through these different phases, but it's incredibly exciting to think about the progression of where we are and still how early we are. We have over 30 million wallets that have been onboarded, which is, human beings, some have more than one into the space, but there's still only 300 million people who actually participate in the blockchain and in crypto today. So if you think about that, we're still incredibly early. Like, we are very niche, and we are a representation of, think about when the iPod came into play and people were using MP3s, but you had to put so much effort into that iteration and time period to actually make it worthwhile. Like, there's a lot more to go. And it's creating a very special progression of art and artists and utility and showing value. And I focus as an introduction within NFTs because realistically, that's actually how most of us found ourselves into this space right now. And it's important to understand that that might be the impetus for why you came in or why you're here. But I hope that you're starting to see more utility and examples popping up of indicators of what this might mean going forward. So, for example, realistically, we could see in the future that you might be using your wallet or your digital identity to actually secure your bank information, your digital passport, your driver's license, your COVID vaccine, or your political affiliation. It would be probably more likely that you could verify your identity through your wallet without actually having to give up the information of your identity than using all of these systems that we use today. Why? They're disparate. The way that the phone has evolved wasn't actually made for the internet in the way that the internet and Web3 exists today. And it would only make sense that something needs to come in the future that does to your phone or to hardware what Apple essentially did to your phone in revolutionizing and rebuilding it from the ground up. And I will say, I think that's important because as you enter Web3, it's an opportunity to actually hit reset on the relationship that you have with the ownership of your identity online. Basically, we're seeing this huge revolution of value, and it's a once in a generation, probably once in an ever experience of the true digitization of humanity. I can't think of another time in history where every single piece is actually being integrated. And because of the blockchain, that means that there's a history and a record of every single thing. And so therefore, instead of assuming that Web 2 and the internet should actually have ownership over you, over your value, over your information, you actually have the opportunity to have that self-custody and to have that ownership in a way where you get to choose what you want to share. And so through the reference of NFTs and the introduction to crypto, most of this is around finance, right? I paid for something, it has something of value to me, I'm a part of the community, but the initial implication was, I'm curious if this might make me more money, right? And so a lot of the framework around custody or self-custody, which we'll get into, is actually around this idea of like becoming your own bank and learning why it's important to actually have more autonomy over that and in that way. And its wallet adoption has become more important because when something gets taken from you, there's no takebacks, there's no insurance, there's no recovery. We're seeing these like really interesting use cases where people like lose projects that they're working on or the ability to progress on something. And it's complicated, it's scary, and it's very, very overwhelming. And so we're kind of going to go through these three categories of understanding. One is the basics, which a lot of you already know, and so I'll gloss over it. One is kind of avoiding threats, which are a little bit more complicated. And the third is sort of like master level. And let's get into it from the beginning. And I would say, honestly, I think it's worth going through these again, because truthfully, if you're explaining it to someone else, which I would say is kind of your responsibility being so early in the space, because we're constantly always getting asked questions and it's very confusing. Like, you just need a very simple way to explain it, which is essentially like, not your keys, not your coins. Think about it like sending mail. You have a public account where anyone can send you something in the mail, right? Like whether or not you want it, could be spam, could be a bill, could be all of these different things, or it could be something amazing, but only you can access that mail when you have your mail key. That's essentially what your private key is. It's where on the blockchain through, cryptography, you have access to that. And so that private key is just you. And so essentially when we're thinking about that protection, we go into these three factors: the exchange account, the software wallet, and the hardware wallet. And this is actually, I think, important because, in some of the sub pop chats, like even in the No Boys Allowed or in Pop NFT, I see questions coming up around this where I think there's an assumption that we all have shared more education around the why than there actually is. So I would assess these three categories within kind of like ownership, security, and ease of use as the ratings metrics. And I will also say, like, our job here is to try and lift up security and education in the whole community and space. The choices are yours to make. And we just know that when one person gets wrecked or when one person isn't thinking about this future thing, it actually hurts the whole community. And so that's why Ledger, like, we really see that as part of our role. And it's very important to me because I also think education allows for more people to feel comfortable taking that leap of faith, which otherwise could create the same types of patterns that we've seen in other eras. And so with exchange accounts, think about like Kraken NFT, think about Binance. This is not self-custody. This is username, password. This is very Web 2. This is, I have not been given a recovery phrase. I do not have to have any autonomy around this. But this also means if I want to do something, if I want to exchange my funds into fiat or into something else, I essentially have to get permission, approval, and there's a process that takes time to do so. It also means that if there's a glitch on the site, if it goes away, there are issues sometimes towards like getting the things that you want and need. And that's a very Web 2 framework, which is you have the luxury of accessing some type of digital good for a period of time based on the longevity and sophistication of that business. And as we've seen recently with a lot of challenges around custodies and exchanges, some people are unfortunately getting really screwed. And I would say to that point, if it hurts the community, it's like if you've listened to a lot of media recently, they're immediately so quick to attack the possibility of crypto. And it's as if you were comparing the entire process of the stock market to like Bernie Madoff. It's like, yes, there's always going to be a range of these outcomes, but if you're trying to be Web 2.5 or you're trying to be in between, ultimately it's just gonna have some of the same challenges we've seen before. The second version is a software wallet. I'm assuming that every single person that is in POP obviously has a software wallet, because you need to be able to connect to get into CPG or into POP. And this actually has great ownership, right? Like you get a recovery phrase, which is that seed phrase is a 12 or 24 word phrase. And what's really amazing about blockchain technology is no matter what happens, you can always reset your information with that, which is really incredible. It doesn't matter what wallet you're using or if you lose it or anything like that, it's always available to you. But it doesn't have good security. And that's because we all love convenience. And I would say, like, if Netflix is competing with sleep, I always say Ledger is competing with convenience, because like we just like easy stuff. We've been trained for instant gratification, and that's fine. But Web3 infrastructures are still outdated in that regard. Like think about 20 years ago, the Palm Pilot was worth more than Apple and Amazon combined. Like we've come a long way, and we kind of have to hit reset again. And so essentially a software wallet is like Phantom, Temple, MetaMask. It is something that is essentially a browser extension that allows you to utilize your crypto on the different chains for these purposes, particularly usually getting NFTs. And the reason why it's a challenge from a security perspective is because essentially you should always assume that your hardware or the technology, like the operating system around the hardware, is lying to you, and you won't know. So you think that you're signing a transaction, getting mosquitoes, which, who knows what the mosquitoes would do, but the transaction you're really assigning in the back end has an attacker's address in it, and you'll have no idea. And essentially, like you can see that number in the back end is different, right, for the total. So you think you're getting something for 3 ETH, and you're actually 10 ETH, and you're getting taken. Something I'll say about that, which I'm happy to get into later, is like, if you're using your laptop or your phone and you have information on your clipboard, especially within browsers, you should automatically assume that that's public information. And I always tell people when they're explaining something to a family or friend, think about it as if you're in a heist film. Like think about it as if you're in The Bourne Identity, or you're in Ocean's 8, or you're in, could be The Italian Job, whatever floats your boat. But it is that type of experience that we're having right now. And you can that joke, it really happens all the time. And that is really what leads us to the hardware wallet category, which is essentially a device that keeps your private key, that private mailbox key, stored off the blockchain. And that's incredibly important because A, it provides you self-custody. It does not matter if a company exists, dies, anything happens with it from like a top level corruption. You always own your assets and you control your withdrawal, transfers, anything around that. It has incredible security, and the ease of use is what needs to be improved over time. And the reality is that not all of the ways that hardware wallets are secured are kind of born equal. There's something called a secure chip within a hardware wallet, and that's actually where your private key is stored. And I would think about it as in a credit card or in your passport, there's actually a key in there that stores your individual information. And that's just the vehicle or form of which it shows up. So similarly for a hardware wallet, it might seem weird and strange now, but it's actually just a traditional form of security from that category. And, I would say that I'm biased because I work for Ledger, but I'm actually not. Like the reason why I joined Ledger is because I believe in Ledger becoming like the Apple of Web3. And I believe in the fact that the entire system of which we exist is changing. And in order for us to allow individuals to make that change in a way that could have intergenerational impact, we have to fundamentally disrupt the hardware and interface that we live our life through. And so within Ledger, this private key that we've generated is something called a secure element key that we actually store everything through. And we have our own trusted display screen that we've developed along with the actual operating system. And so your private keys are always offline in this secure element. and no one can access them except for you, which we always say, like, if you find another hardware wallet on the street, bring it to us, bring it to our dungeon, which is our white hat hackers in France that can hack into anything in the world, and they're hackers for good. They work for the community and trying to always make sure everything's as secure as possible. They can hack into literally anything else. They could hack into a phone, they could hack into another hardware wallet, like anything. And the ledgers are the only things that truly are secure in the world like that. And trusted display is important. And this is why clear signing is so important, because basically there's, going back to that software wallet example, you would be able to see within the trusted display if the thing you think you're signing is actually that thing. So say that like your trusted display says something that you think is right, but it could actually be wrong. If you're looking at your ledger device, it'll repeat what the actual transaction should be. And it's more sophisticated in summary. And then you can tell if it's right or not. So if it is actually wrong, you can actually reject the transaction and kind of bypass that challenge that happens in the software element. And so basically what we find today that's most effective, at least for now, is sort of the software and hardware combo. And it brings together that ease of use and security. And I would say the biggest version of that is within MetaMask and Ledger. We're really lucky because we're a platform. We're able to have very healthy partnerships with everyone in the ecosystem, and we want them to be as secure as possible. And this essentially brings you sort of that extension interface of the transaction with the kind of ability to use the ledger anywhere you are. But we recently announced actually that we're going to be doing something called Ledger Connect, which will take it so that it is its own browser extension, and it'll make it so that you can actually connect directly from the extension to your Nano, and you won't need the in-between. So long-term, it really removes the need for the software wallet and makes it so that you have 100% security. And it also actually will have this like Web3 check function where if it thinks you're signing something that could be messed up, it'll also bring that up in the browser extension version. So it's not just within the wallet, and you don't have to use Ledger Live with it. And that's not just a plug, it's actually good. But yeah, so essentially it makes it so there's one key to rule them all, and you can use it across any chains. And I'm sure everybody knows this, but like within private keys and the recovery phrase was developed originally from the Bitcoin community because key phrases are so long and confusing that otherwise it would be really hard to manage them. And this is that BIP 3939 standard. So if you have a friend and you want to get really technical, and they're saying like, oh, community is biased, or, oh, did like a wallet company actually make up your seed phrase? It's like, no. And you can actually have tons and tons of recovery phrases tied to one wallet. There's like a really cool site where you can generate and see all of the different potential ones that come out of it. So it's like a pretty intense generation. And I would say, like, you know, if you want to think long-term about your needs, I would always have a backup device. Like people wear ledgers now, and I actually have one over there. I should be wearing it. And they're always like, well, what if someone comes up to you and, you know, says, give me your ledger? It's like, okay, well, someone could come up to you and say, give me your wallet. You hand them your wallet. You'd lose more with a physical wallet than you would with a ledger, because actually if you hand them that ledger, just go buy a new one and use your recovery phrase and you can set it up. And in addition to that, there's actually an advanced feature with the ledger where you can set up a dummy account within your device, which we don't talk about that much because we don't want it to be widely known, but you can make it so that it seems like you have like nothing in there. So if like put your PIN code in, you could put the second PIN code in, and it'll make it seem like you have like no crypto. And then, you know, you save the rest of it. And it's, you know, it's fireproof and waterproof within some of the kind of like accessories that we have. And I would say, honestly, the reason why we're harping so hard about security now on top of digital assets is that, again, going back to earlier, like critical digital assets will become everything in your life. It's the same way that, you know, people have babies and they get a Gmail account or an email for that baby as like a gift for the future. It's like your Web3 wallet will be that gift for the future, and then you have control over it. Okay, so like let's get into the threats and the hacks. And there's kind of two different versions. There's these viruses and malware and spyware, and then there's targeted hacking. For the more virus piece, this is actually code that can copy itself and has a detrimental effect, such as corrupting your system or destroying data. I would say that this is very common, and this is where, you know, an account, let's say there's like a really popular mint coming, This is one that would try to get into your system. It would be attacking a larger community. And the goal is to try and get as much as possible in a short period of time, because we exist in a community of FOMO culture. And we always encourage like JOMO, like joy of missing out, a little bit, because you need to take a deep breath. You need to check if something is correct. You should phone a friend. Like all of the classic tools are things that you should be thinking about in these cases, because we're all very active members of the community. And then targeted hacking. So let's say I'm Chris, or I'm Jamie, or I'm someone else in this group. I have a big following. I have a lot of influence, and I have a really sophisticated wallet. I'm going to target that person, and I'm going to try and attack their infrastructure to get all of their crypto or their NFTs. And we see this happen too, where, a friend of mine from the Boss Beauties community, this happened to her. They hacked into her account, and then they posted in the Boss Beauties Discord so that they were actually able to make it so that because that person got hacked, they could then hack many others. And so these are things that might seem like, yeah, I've heard of that before, but no one actually ever gives the most shit until they get hacked. And then they're like, oh man, then they become the biggest advocate. And what we're trying to do is start this conversation before that happens and make it really simple to understand why 30 extra minutes of setup at the beginning and a couple extra minutes while you're kind of using your device is so essential. The second threat, of course, is physical robbery or theft. And again, as Dry said, like, you can set up a dummy backup account, but also for this, if someone takes it, if you put in the wrong PIN code 3 times, the device factory resets, and let them, who cares? It does not matter. And you could, of course, get scammed. Phishing scams, which I kind of mentioned, this is similar to things you might have seen before, like someone sends a bad email and you click on it. To be honest, now that could happen even if someone sends you a calendar invite. So if you get a random calendar invite on your calendar, you don't know who that person is, don't click on it, because by clicking accept to it, that could actually be a phishing scam. And I know these sound like quite complicated, and I don't mean to freak anyone out, but it's actually more common than you think. The second one, which we kind of talked about earlier, was blind signing, where the smart contract isn't actually what you think it is. And that's just because we're to that point of ease of use. Everything is super complicated right now. And so that's why it's really important to make things as simple as possible and to use something that has clear signing. So also if new wallets come out where, for example, Block is coming out with a wallet, which is fingerprint identifier or biometrics, if it doesn't have a screen, it's not secure, truly. And that's why actually using biometrics in a lot of wallets at this time isn't actually the most secure option, because it's really easy to impersonate another person. And so, yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like when I'm having these talks, I'm giving some kind of Minority Report discussion or something, and I don't mean to be that type of person, but these are really common. So again, we have tools that help solve and mitigate against those risks. I would say the biggest risk that we don't talk about a lot, which is the cause of all of these things, is human error. We're doing everything that we can despite Web 2, and we're doing everything we can despite natural human error. And that's why it's incredibly important to actually understand the full process, because otherwise you can just kind of get screwed. So again, reminders, don't give your seed phrase to anyone. Don't even give it to your partner would be the most intense version. Definitely have a separate wallet than someone in your family. God forbid, you get divorced or something happens. How are you going to split that up? Also, if you have kids, we recommend getting them their own wallet or a family wallet. And something we do at Ledger a lot is if you see me wearing a Ledger around my neck at a party, it probably has a small amount on it for minting or a couple of NFTs, and the rest are in different wallets, and that are in different phrases. And that for me just makes me feel easier about it. Just as old school style. And then, just basically make sure that you're constantly checking to have all of the best practices in mind. Finally, when it comes to NFTs, if you are in the Pop NFT chat and you're getting some alpha and you're like, oh my God, I have 30 seconds, or I'm going to lose this incredible mint that I'm going to flip, or I want to be part of this club, don't make these very simple mistakes. There's tons of fake collections out there, and you can check if they're fake or not by some of the verification tools, like having a connected account. These are like small things that you can tell make a big difference around it. Additionally, a lot of the time there will be misleading offers or offers in different currencies that make it seem like they're higher, but it's actually dollars, right? So instead of it being like 20 ETH, it'll seem like you're getting that offer, but it's actually in dollars and you'll get rugged. And this happens to people more than you think it would. In addition to that, like fake project founders or social accounts, I would say most exchanges like OpenSea or others take no accountability for the security threats that they help ensue through the lack of build within their product. And it's no one's fault in the sense that like who knew the rapid adoption and some of the need states around it. But essentially, if you're on Twitter, you might have one that looks like the founder or that community, and underneath it, it's a totally different name. And like literally, it happens to us. Like like some of the folks at Ledger that are, you know, degen obsessed are in a WhatsApp group, and I got something from Moonbirds, and I thought like Ian, who worked with me, maybe like got me a hookup, and I was like sick, and I almost clicked on it, and then was like, oh shit, I should check with them first, and they were like, yeah, that would be nice, but no. And I almost got rugged, you know, and this is my life. So you're not alone in needing to check your brain because the brain is deceiving. Also, again, smart contract functions. So basically, if it says like function or instead of mint, you should understand that this is an issue. Or if you see a same transaction, but a different interface, that's also like a telltale time. And these are two examples from MetaMask and Rabby underneath. And I'm happy with the pop group to share more examples so that you kind of have like an image gallery that you could check against to see if something is what it's supposed to be. Same with the mints. So sometimes it might seem like you still have an opportunity because you go to that website, but if you actually check the date on OpenSea or on a different exchange, you'll be able to tell if the mint date is correct or not. And this is complicated too, because a lot of the websites are meant to feel really, I think, like old school and lo-fi, and you aren't sure if it's the right one or not. So again, like verified accounts, proper link checking, ask a friend that's done it, or have them share the right link in a group chat. Like I think Chris has always done a phenomenal job of that, of just making sure that as CPG and Pop have grown, that there's a lot of transparency and making sure everything's verified. And then the final reminder is like the blockchain is public, it's transparent. So Etherscan is really your validating factor. Like it's essentially as if you were one of those people that was obsessed with like listening to like traffic cop radio, and you could hear coming through the call-ins. Etherscan kind of is that. Like the, you know, especially it's great when someone's like, yeah, I'm totally in that club. And then you look and you're like, I don't think so. But really it's good to see like, okay, is the contact address, the transactions, the source code, the symbol, is this consistent with what I know it should be with the community? And how does that tie back? And so I think it was like important to get kind of into that piece, because as much as we want to talk about the future of everything that's coming, I actually found in prep for this, in going through the different chats, a lot of folks within Pop actually don't know enough about basic security to make sure that as the ecosystem develops, it's going to continue to, they're going to protect themselves. And then I would say once you've kind of figured that out a bit, get ready for everything that's coming next. Like if you think about it, everything's around these IP infrastructures that I would argue right now are actually mirroring too much of what we expect from like Web 2 gaming or like short-term results. But if you think about DAOs, like decentralized autonomous organizations, plus critical digital assets, plus identity, then you're starting to think more long-term about the fact that when we exist online, we exist in a borderless world. And when we have digital assets that we own within certain communities, we will have the ability to use those across many different parts of the metaverse. And you'll note that up until in this whole conversation, I have not brought up the word metaverse. And that's because I think it's used really poorly. I do think that Facebook or Meta's description of metaverse is probably the most accurate, which is like people coming together and doing things virtually. But the reality is people get distracted by thinking that metaverse means your entire digital self will be online. And what it really means is that you're providing value to your time online, and you should have ownership of it. And what I think is fun about, what we build is it's very much a bridge between IRL and URL. And your URL existence should have just as much value and protection as IRL. And the balance is shifted incorrectly. So I really would say in the next 5 years, 8 years, you will have a hardware revolution where the devices that exist today will not sufficiently protect your Web3 value. And the ones of tomorrow will, and it will allow you to engage with apps like Signal or different versions of Telegram or new things that are being built by developers that are inherently built on blockchain technology. And so the games that you're playing, you'll earn different value, right? Like DeFi, like your kids will essentially be earning portfolio value from childhood, but maybe they'll be earning educational badges that let them into a school where people are participating from all over the world. Like maybe they'll actually be having a version of identity where if you're in the United States, you don't need to rely on something like the credit score, which, is very harmful to many people. You'll actually be able to you can verify the value that you have through your hardware device. So we're really like just at the precipice of what this is going to look like. And there's a lot of indicators. And I would say, don't get caught up in just what we're seeing right now. Like use the bear market as an opportunity to actually remind yourself why you're interested in the space and what are the long-term protections that you can place now. I will also say, as someone who learned by doing, if you have a MetaMask or another wallet like Phantom, Temple, whatever, and you're getting a ledger or another hardware wallet and you want to secure your assets, it's way more complicated and frustrating to transfer your assets from your current wallet to a ledger than to start with your hardware wallet and build your collection that way, because you then have to deal with making sure that you're sending everything correctly and to the right places. And then, there's no shortage of, I would say, like transaction anxiety that exists. And it is very nice to feel comfortable, but you still have to be smart about your choices. So yeah, I'll kind of start with that. And I think we're almost at time for questions, if that's cool.
Phenomenal. I really appreciate that you hit the time a little early. We're getting some questions in the chat. I think one that quickly came through as we start to queue them. And again, thank you so much for getting on the call with us. And this is probably like a layup but also not an urgent answer, is like, how is your Android support coming along for that particular browser extension that you shared earlier?
Yeah, that's actually a great
question. That's a curiosity question.
So for those who don't know, we initially started building the Ledger Connect on Safari for iOS, which I would say actually our user base is about 50-50 Android Safari. So it wasn't a choice to not include our Android users. It was just like a means of testing, to be honest. Initially, we kind of took a SWAT team on the side and said, like, if we want to try and solve against this problem, and you're pushing almost like we do, basically at Ledger, we do sprints every 6 weeks on projects. And then we actually also have hackathons, which I'll actually, next time I'll bring it to the pop group, because we do it from outside of Ledger and there could be some really interesting build ideas together. But it kind of came from one of those. So we're also working on the Android piece. But we have this sort of end-to-end offering now. And so we want to get it right first with iOS and then build on Android so that we're not double building at the same time. And I will also say, to that end, we try to always make sure when we push Ledger Live updates that we're pushing both to iOS and Android at the same time and not pushing separately. But if you noticed, over the last year, we actually had to remove the Discover section from iOS desktop from mobile, because we essentially had an app store within the app store that Apple was not reaping any rewards from, because of the function. So they were like, what? And so we kind of made that adjustment for the short term for that as well.
The App Store. So for folks that are listening in and want to raise a hand and have a question asked themselves, please do so in the app. Also, if you are listening along and are dying to ask a question, but you can't talk right now, which is also common, please hit us in the chat and we will relay them to Ariel. Golly, put it in the chat, man. What do you got?
Oh, no, I can't talk. I just couldn't raise my hand because I was already unmuted. But my question would be regarding Ledger. So we know Ledger, like we all have our OpenSea page where even with our Ledger, when we integrate it to MetaMask, for example, do you have, like, for example, those hidden NFTs that get airdropped to us? What would be the risk of interacting with those NFTs with our Ledger, in the hidden folder section?
Yeah. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking it. It's also nice to hear your voice because we've interacted on chat before. So I would say if it's a hidden NFT that you didn't get sent, that isn't part of a collection that you're affiliated with, I would ignore it. I wouldn't do anything with it. I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't claim it. There are vulnerabilities in those that can attack you and can have kind of the malware built into them. I would also say that if you accept them into your wallet, you're more likely to know that like scammers or kind of just spammers can work with you. Like they track that. So, unless it's a friend sending you something, but again, if it's unknown and it's in your hidden wallet, I would leave it there.
Okay. But with like interacting with them with my hot wallet or interacting with them with my Ledger, I think the Ledger would provide me that extra layer of security that would need me to sign. No?
Yes. I mean, it would. The Ledger would provide you the extra security, but then it just goes more into kind of the why, right? Like I would still encourage, even with the Ledger, to do some Googling or some extra searching and make sure that it is something that feels verifiable to you. But yes, Ledger, it's actually that type of thing where the Ledger would, but if you don't actually even know what you're tracking against, then it's sort of difficult, right? It'll be like, and with Web3 check, that's a good example with Ledger Connect. Like it would have a pop-up that's like, this looks suspicious. But if your Ledger is just reading something, it's not going to say like, oh, I think this is a scam. That's part of why Ledger Connect is so important.
Okay. And just to be clear, they're not actually in our wallets, right? Even the OpenSea shows as we own them, they're not actually there, are they?
Correct. They're not.
Okay.
In our wallet. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Mr. Cantino would like to come up and ask a question. Chris.
Oh, I love it.
It's me. You're the best. I'm so happy that I'm inspired by you and Ledger so much. So, and thank you. And you've been here like so early for Genesis and for Pop, so we appreciate you. And I have a really great question. So you talked about the hardware revolution, but we have seen like at Ledger like really extend themselves into, I guess for lack of better words, culture and like with Ledger Market. And I know your background is you're a creator and just how you see like the role of curation and where Ledger's going with market, partnering with other creators. And please try to keep your answer under 20 minutes.
Good question. And you're amazing. And thank you again. I feel like every time I talk about something, I'm like, well, I have to thank Cantino for being so welcoming to me. I would say a couple of things. So I didn't mention we launched Ledger Market last Monday, which we gave spots to the Pop group with, which is Ledger's kind of first sale distribution platform, is important to us because we're solving against Web3 challenges. We realized like huge volumes of ETH are coming in through communities and brand leaders, and they don't know how to set things up properly or educate people. And so they're unintentionally kind of helping people get rugged. And then new volumes of people are coming through bad practices. And for something like OpenSea, 98% of the NFTs that are on the platform have never been bid on. So there's a huge curation issue. And so we decided to launch the market really to make it so that if we have a high value creator, artist, brand project, that we are giving a very dedicated for sale opportunity there. And then you can take it and do what you want with it elsewhere. But we want that. We basically, when we launched it, created the world's first secure mint. And that's what we really are focused on. It's like bringing security to every piece of it. And you're right, like culture is essential. Cultural authority builds product authority. And so when I joined, and Ian Rogers, who's also in Pop, who's our chief experience officer, is very much this way. Like, you cannot try to come into a space and say that the product is worthwhile without actually showing it. Like, show, don't talk. That's our motto. And truthfully, with the Ledger, when I joined, I was like, this is a utility. Like, this is a tool, and we have to make it a lifestyle. Like, you should feel when you use your phone or your device, you don't have a personal attachment necessarily to the hardware. It's everything that it gives you access to in your life. And so we wanted to create partnerships with top communities like CPG and Pop, like Bobby Hundreds, like all of these others that we're working with, like Artifact and Brick, who we announced will be some of the first market drops, because we know that they care deeply about their communities, and also because Ledger's not the main character of the story. Like, we are the secondary character. And so if we partner, really, like, the impetus was that we started to get outreach from NFT communities, because NFT people innately understand self-custody. And so we thought, okay, let's do Discord security talks. Let's do Twitter security talks. And realized, actually, this is really meaningful. And we removed discount codes because we felt like if we have that as a part of the brand and the conversation, it removes the value of the conversation. Because actually, when we do these talks, it's not about sales. It's truly about trying to educate the community. And we have been incredibly focused on lifestyle. And it was really cool because at Ledger Open, the feedback we kind of got was like early Nike meets Apple. And for us, that's what we want. We want to build culture and tech at the same time. And we want to make sure that as we evolve, we're here to make your stories come to life. And that's why I'm trying to get people to understand that it's like beyond the initial value of the NFT, like the way the space is moving with this revolution. Like, think about it. There's nothing like this at this time. And you have a chance to be early and part of it. And we want all of our ledgers to be collector's editions. We had a conversation because we did a collab with Stadium Goods, and we're talking to the guy from Stadium Goods, and he was like, oh, there's going to be a time where I can sell ledgers on secondary at Stadium Goods. And we were like, yeah. And people are doing that with the VFriends one. So it's been really fun to see, and we don't take it lightly from the community at all. Like, we see part of people getting passes at market is almost the closest thing you can to like a ledger coin. And we take it very seriously to provide value and continue to make sure that we hold true with security and trust, because if we lose that, we sort of lose everything.
I feel like there should be so many more hands raised now, but we've also just blown everybody's mind.
No.
So
I mean, the nice thing too is like Ian and me are quite around in the chats and try to answer everything as quickly as possible when stuff comes up. And I would say, like, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Also, through Mikey, through Chris, like, you have very easy access in case they catch something we don't, and they'll frequently message us and be like, oh, do you, like, or me particularly, like, I kind of become to be known as Ledger Lady. But like, if you have stuff we can help with, or if you want us to talk, or you want ledgers for your community, like, please don't hesitate. And definitely just don't assume. Like, unfortunately, you have to think about the reality that human emotions don't change, boundaries change. And there have always been people trying to take and trying to have a easier shortcut. And there are just some things you have to do to protect yourself. And we are in that phase with Web3. So don't look back and wish you could have made a different choice earlier. It'll get easier over time.
I would say that you're 100% underselling how generous you are with your time and responsiveness. So the community should know that, like, we answer some chats is very much you've done a tremendous amount for this community and many others. We did see a hand come through, so I'm going to bring up Naomi, a London-based art director. Naomi, fire away. You should be able to speak.
Hey, thanks, Mikey, and thanks so much, Ariel, for that really extensive breakdown. My question was something you mentioned, but it was just to get an overview again of
It's coming through a little
those
broken for me, so you might have to
who've
slow it
already
down
kind
or
of
repeat it.
bought NFTs and have an existing MetaMask, and going through the process. Oh, sure. Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay,
If you
great.
want to type it in the chat,
Yeah, my
we can also
question
cover
was regarding those who've got existing NFTs in things like, yeah, maybe that's easier because my
I think
connection's
I know
been
your
like,
question.
I'll put it in the chat.
Naomi, I think I'm going to take a guess at it, and thank you for it. I think the question, maybe I'm wrong, is if you have existing NFTs and you have a MetaMask and you need to transfer them or you get a hardware wallet, what would you do? And if that's not the question, I'm going to answer it quickly because it's a common question. We recommend that you actually, through your ledger, create a new MetaMask account. Why? You could connect your device to your current MetaMask account, but you created that account unsecurely. You created that account by creating the MetaMask seed phrase, which means that you are more vulnerable to hacks and scams. And again, I want to say, like, we work with these partners. It's not like, you know, they have horrible infrastructures. Like, we are just the most secure version of the spectrum. So we would recommend that within your ledger, when you set up your ledger, you can then go to MetaMask, create a new account, and it has a function where you would create your own seed phrase, and you can import your phrase and you can connect your ledger. And what it does is it bypasses the need to create that MetaMask seed phrase, and you can use your ledger directly connected to MetaMask. And we work very closely with the MetaMask team, and we'll have a mobile integration that launches at the end of August, which we announced during EthCC. So we're constantly working on trying to make that process as smooth and reliable as possible. And we have a shared, like, just very, very close with them. And that's what I would recommend doing. And then I would transfer your NFTs to your new account. And I would do it that way. And we also have NFT support within Ledger Live. So you actually, you know, long term, we hope with Ledger Connect that you wouldn't need a different software wallet to be that pairing.
Awesome. And you nailed it, by the way. You read her mind and through it. So thank you so much. We did have another question from Tyler. So Tyler says, I always hear Ledger drawing analogies to Apple as a hardware leader in Web3. Can you talk more about future projects that you could envision or have spun out from the hackathons that are outside the scope of a hardware wallet like the Ledger Marketplace, similar to how Apple expanded from the Macintosh to iPhone, iPad, etc.? Ledger could introduce other tools, platforms, Ledger Metaverse, and so on. So I think before you answer that question, I'm going to just second and third Ariel's comment about the vibe at Ledger Live at NFT NYC. It was 100% Nike meets Apple. It was clean and super informative, and they actually tackled a metaverse as well as the marketplace tease and brought up Bobby Hundreds and Betty and a whole bunch of other folks. So without a doubt, the question is in the right direction, but for sure, I'm sure Ariel has some things to click on further, double click into.
Yeah, well, thank you again for that. Yeah, we look at it as the full experience. And I feel a little bit, Tyler, like you answered your own question in the sense that we have multiple elements, right? We have the hardware progression, which if you look at what Apple, or I would say like an IBM has done, would make a lot of sense for us in terms of what's needed. Like, it's not even like, oh, what does Ledger want to do? If you think about the space, this laptop that I'm talking to you on, which we're talking in the metaverse because it's a phone call and it doesn't matter where anyone is in the world and we're all connected. And maybe it's, 70% compared to in person because the video's on, right? Versus like 40%, which I would say is just an audio phone call. But it's pretty real, and I love seeing Mikey, and it makes me happy to have someone else's face to see, right? So we want to solve for that, so it would make sense that we would go in that direction. But we also know within the full spectrum, we need operating system advancements, which is why we have Ledger Live, which I think long-term could be seen as its own kind of operating system. That's why we're building Ledger Connect, which is that browser extension to help with that security piece, because we know the entire world won't shift immediately. And then the hackathons are super interesting because the relationship with developers is critical. Like, we're a global business. We ship to over 200 countries. We're in 9 languages. And we all know that the global adoption of crypto and digital assets around Web3 is just as fast. And a lot of the times in the United States, if that's where you're coming from, you have a very different need state relationship to crypto. Like, we have a lot of people that use Ledger because they've experienced huge inflation in their country or volatile government. And they know by having everything within self-custody, they have more optionality around their own assets in a way that could be taken from them, or they've experienced that friction more deeply. So we have to account for all of those needs. And also because using Web3 and like coming on board, like no one would say like, oh, I expect one day I'll get a job in the internet, right? But now we all work in this space. And so we need people to have fun with it. Like, we don't want it to be like, when I first joined, I think we just described it as the best hardware wallet in the world or something, most secure. It's like, nobody knows what that means. And why should you? Like, nobody, when I wasn't like, oh, I need to deal with my Fiber Connect so that I can access this website. It was like, no, I want to download something off of iTunes so that I can listen to like Snoop Dogg or something, you know, that was first introduced. So we have to have fun, and all of these things help us have fun. And that's why, you could, and I would say to that, more hardware companies will come into the market. But if you don't have the proper secure element and you don't have your own operating system and you don't have a screen, it's just varying levels of security. It's not secure. And we are not secure-ish. We are very secure.
100%. I would say that after watching the metaversal part of the Ledger Live at NFT NYC, like, I want my kids to go and play in it and go on the quest.
Yeah.
I would say, so for me, just recapping, and maybe I'm missing something. So I have MetaMask tied to Ledger on my browsers, various browsers. I have it downloaded to my phone as an app. I have it downloaded on my desktop in a couple of different areas. And then I have I'm about to go get a second Ledger because that has been long overdue for me. What are some other tips in the ecosystem that folks should kind of check through? Lou just said that he definitely just connected to MetaMask Ledger through the browser extension. Did we miss any?
Yeah, I would say the biggest tips to remember is don't take a photo of your recovery phrase. Don't share it with a friend or family. Don't keep it stored in your notes. If you're going to keep it on your device, which we don't recommend at all, the best case scenario would be the 1Password app. But there's still, more vulnerabilities there than keeping it entirely off. Definitely get a backup just so you have it. It might make you feel more comfortable. Don't worry about losing it, right? Like, you're going to be okay. Keep your recovery phrase just through the Ledger if you're connecting to your software wallet on the browser. And then, just like take it day by day. It's okay. Remember, it's okay. And the last thing I would say to the point you just mentioned is that was referencing in our Ledgerverse with Sandbox. We're creating something called School of Block, which is a game where you'll actually learn, and you're a character that's kind of fighting against scammers and hackers, and your shield is your ledger in the game. And we absolutely are very interested in what's coming with more young people getting involved in crypto and Web3. So keep an eye out for that. But general tips. Smart. Nothing will surprise you. So expect to be, taken advantage of, essentially.
Sweet. Well, you've got beta testers and my kids coming for sure.
Awesome.
We are just about at time. I can't thank you enough for hopping on out of your schedule, which I'm sure is manic based off of the success of the launch last week and just what you do in POP and CPG. I think we had one more question. Can you stay on for a hot minute?
I can, and thank you again because I'm very grateful to be here and always happy to. So,
okay, is it me? One more question. So it could be. I think it's actually then it's going to be a couple. So yeah, Harold, fire away. course,
I just
Harold,
want to say real quick. I love y'all both. Appreciate everything y'all are doing to move forward in the space. As one of the folks who helped co-found Black Ad, this community for Black folks getting into Web3, culture is a thing that's used a lot in Web3, generally speaking. And I wanted to know what y'all's thoughts were, as obviously some of the intersections y'all have done, Gunna wearing a ledger on the red carpet. How you all see Ledger being a brand that pulls more people that don't typically look like the crypto bros into the space by the approach that y'all are taking. And if that's part of your ethos, is that part of your DNA? Is it a customer acquisition strategy? How are y'all viewing that? And thanks.
I love that question. Thank you, Harold, and thank you for what you do. I finally got to meet Harold in person at Consensus and was like, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think it's in our DNA. Like, the truth is we are similar to Google in the sense that you could be searching many different things and it still will feel like yours. And I believe, and I know we believe at Ledger, that every person should have the choice to participate in Web3 and crypto. And to have the choice means you have to have access to the tools and you have to understand a little bit about the tools. And unfortunately, a lot of the early adoption of crypto is mirroring a lot of sort of exclusivity that has existed within previous financial institutions. And I would just say kind of general, privilege. So I think that it's incredible. I mean, not I think, but like, I know it's very important to every piece of what we do. And it's funny because for us, it's more like, with Ghana or something, it's like, there's a huge history of like the value that you have is the value that you wear. And we really want people to understand, because if you see Ledger, you don't inherently know what it is. So for us, like, it would never make sense to get a sports arena, but it would make sense for someone who's an indicator of that history of showing the value of what you wear or that relationship. Someone like Gunna would be great for that. Or like, we've done some really interesting music collabs with like Sweetie. And we have another one coming, and it's very important. But I would say to that point, Howard, it's all about education. So we try to partner with as many communities as possible, and need to be doing even more of that, and providing ledgers to folks that wouldn't typically have the means or ability to have access to the product innately, and providing that education afterwards. And I think we really see, I personally see the disruption of education potential in this category as a huge mechanism to get people at scale on board that wouldn't have access otherwise.
Thank you for that, and shout out to y'all for sponsoring us at Black Tech Week last week, where we gave away 50 ledgers to folks who got onboarded and set up their wallets all in a workshop session. So thanks.
Well, thank you.
So I'm going to keep going. You tell me when you got to leave. We have Sonics is available, and Ledger just keeps doing all sorts of amazing things. I was got a tweet this morning from Raf about vets in digital assets, and also the beneficiary of some Ledger activities. So as a vet, that warms my heart. Sonics, you're up.
Thanks so much, Mikey. Hi, Ariel. My question's regarding actually the Ledger market. So regarding the drop that just happened, I think last week, how would projects go about partnering up with Ledger for mints on the Ledger website? Because I'm working on a project, and like you said, the Ledger minting site is to create the perfect and most secure mint. And I've seen with a lot of like phishing or draining scams with mints, a lot of people are really worried. And I just want to offer the best minting experience to our minters. So I was just wondering how we could go ahead and set up a meeting with Ledger, or like a potential partnership, just how that would go.
Yeah. I would email me. It's just my first last name at ledger.fr, because we're French, or .com. It'll forward to me. I don't think there's a general Ledger email account, but I'll find out. And if there is, I'll put it in the pop channel afterwards. Please do that. Please reach out. I will say, and people who I've chatted with know this, sometimes I'm much better at responding in the group chat than sometimes I am in the one-on-ones, because I miss it and then I look up and see, and then I'm like, shit. But yeah, reach out to me and I'll hook you up with the right people.
Okay, great.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
We also had a question from Dustin, who had his hand raised. Dustin.
Hi, thanks, Mikey. Hi, Ariel.
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You know, I used to get. I have several ledgers. I'm a big fan, by the way. So, but recently, at least in my country, you can't order straight from the website. So we have to get from these distributors. In fact,
Mm,
my last purchase was from a distributor, and I'm always concerned about maybe fake ones. I just
yeah.
wanted to know what's the worst that can happen. If you get one of those fake ones.
Yes. What country do you live in, if you don't mind me asking? Okay, if you don't want to answer.
I'm from the Philippines.
Okay, yeah. So we have an official reseller business within Ledger. You can go to ledger.com and see the official verified list of resellers. They're on there. So if you have to buy through that reseller, you can always check. And what I will say is in the States, we actually recently partnered with Best Buy. And now in over 200 stores, you can do same day. It's actually the only place in the States you can order through Amazon, but you can do same day pickup through Best Buy. And for individuals that are more interested in privacy, it's a way to purchase without having to share your information. And obviously, we don't retain any customer information. But to your point, if you got a vulnerable ledger, what that would probably mean, like to check out for, shrink wrap is removed on the overall package. That number one, if you ever bought a ledger that doesn't have shrink wrap, I would not use it. The second is when you're setting it up, you have to go through the activation of getting your recovery phrase, and that's an individual thing through the blockchain, through the secure element chip that cannot be messed up. So it would more be like if you were vulnerable and it gave you a phrase and you didn't understand what to look for. So just basically no shrink wrap, don't use it. And you can always reach out to our customer support.
Okay, well, just to let you know, Ariel, I'm sure it's the same, not just in my country. I'm sure it's the same in Thailand and all those. The resellers, they're basically in marketplaces like in your version of eBay or Amazon,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
never really know if these guys are, if the names of the, sometimes you see duplicate names, you know what I mean? So it's not that safe. Just to let you know, because I bought from a Ledger website straight,
Mm.
and I bought from these resellers, and I have a hard time figuring out which one is the real one. But obviously, I have nothing's been lost yet. just to let you know.
It's good feedback. We historically have had really good kind of reseller partners, but I would say definitely email me and give me the example that you're talking about, because I'd love to share it with our sales team so that they can kind of check and we can update best practices around that as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll email you both
Okay,
the resellers here and how they sell. Okay.
great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We had a really good question about blind signing. So Amanda S asked, and she says, this may be an obvious answer, but a lot of token-gated discords require you to use Collabland to verify your access. And it requires you to enable blind signing if that NFT is in your ledger. Does agreeing to blind signing negate the security of storing the NFTs on your ledger?
Well, it's a great question. It doesn't negate the security that you get of having your private seed phrase off of the blockchain. Remember that if you're storing your NFTs within your ledger, they're not actually in the device, right? They're just basically protected. That private key is like your shield. And it's the shield that's keeping everything from taking it from you. So if you have to enable blind signing, which up until we had clear signing recently, which was where you could actually see on the ledger screen the transaction information, people were blind signing with a ledger device. So a ledger device is still more secure, but we've over the last year and a half enabled clear signing. So if you have to turn blind signing off, what I would recommend is just take the time to actually review everything and make sure that it's right, and then switch back to enabling clear signing afterwards, because the only thing is that if you turn off blind signing, or if you turn on blind signing, you do it, most people forget to turn clear signing back on, and then they make a mistake later. So it's more about a habit than like a particular vulnerability.
Great answer.
Thank you.
All right. We went 8 minutes over. We had a phenomenal hour change now of insights from you. I don't think there's anything else queued up. I think this is a great pause point, and I'm getting in a much better habit of giving you the last word. I will just say goodbye to everyone. So go for whatever it is that you want to say to anybody, and then we're gonna wrap this.
Well, I will just say, Mikey, thank you for being such a wonderful sort of space holder and moderator. And thanks again, always, as Chris and Janet, for your help, and the whole team. If anyone has any other questions, let us know. And it's truly my pleasure. So thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye.